Imagine this. You're in the middle of a conversation and tensions start to rise. Voices get louder, tension seems to be building, and everything's suddenly shifting emotionally. What do? Are you going to react, respond? Are you going to walk away? Or maybe run? Today, we want to unlock the techniques and skills associated with de-escalation. We want you to be able to handle these very difficult conversations with compassion and confidence. Whether it's a patient in crisis, a client upset over their services, or a colleague who's under a lot of stress, these practical de-escalation techniques will help you to turn conflict into collaboration. So let's dive in. De-escalation is a skill that can make your workday smoother and help you to build trust, understanding, and positive relationships. This is how to diffuse tension and navigate emotionally charged situations calmly and confidently. Let's start with one simple truth. Conflict is inevitable. We've all been there. The key isn't avoiding conflict, it's knowing how to handle it effectively. When tensions rise and emotions are high, everything gets overshadowed, including logic. De-escalation helps to bring those emotions back into check and control them in a way that the real issues can be addressed. It's not about winning or losing an argument. It's about diffusing the situation so that everyone feels heard and respected. So now let's break down the techniques that we can use and begin implementing today. The first and most important rule may also be the most difficult. Stay calm. And that's easier said than done when the other person is anything but. Your demeanor is going to set the tone for the entire interaction. If you're calm, it makes it far more likely the other person is going to find calm. They're likely to mirror your behaviors. So take a deep breath, slow down your speech, and lower your tone. Avoid matching the other person's emotional energy. Remember, you can't control their words and actions. You can only control your response. This puts you in control and creates a little bit of time for you to react appropriately. For example, if someone is raising their voice, pause and respond in a soft and steady tone. I hear that you're upset. Let's see what we can do to try to address this together. Next, or even simultaneously, create some space. Creating space is essential for both physical safety and emotional calm. It ensures that the other person doesn't feel cornered or threatened. Take a step back and give them some room. Maintain a neutral stance. Don't lean in, cross your arms, stare right into their eyes. Sometimes we may have a tendency to want to close the door so other people don't hear what's happening, or lean in so that we can talk in a softer tone. But that's rarely a good idea. We want the other person to feel safe, and we want to maintain our own safety as well. Instead, you might say something like, I'm going to stand over here so we both have some space to feel safe. This simple action can lower the tension and provide a sense of security for both people involved. Then you can consider inviting them to commit to safety. What do I mean by this? Sometimes simply stating your intent can help to calm the situation. This not only reassures the other person, but gently encourages them to commit to nonviolence as well. If someone is physically agitated, you might say something like, I want both of us to feel safe so that we can talk. Can we agree to that? Or you might say, is it safe for me to stay here so that we can talk through this? These questions require them to consider answering with a commitment. Yeah, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just frustrated. It can make them aware of just how they're coming across to you as a threat or a danger. And that can really bring the person back into check in many situations. But you want to make sure that you're watching for body language and speech volume cues that might point you in a direction as to what to do next. Pay close attention to these things. They can offer important clues about whether the situation is continuing to escalate or successfully being de-escalated. If the person is clenching their fists, pacing around, or showing other signs of physical agitation, it's a sign that things are going in the wrong direction. If their speech is becoming fast or louder or more profane, you want to take note of that. And if they're making sharp or agitated gestures, this matters. When you see signs of this, you want to consider adjusting your approach. If a specific technique seems to be calming them down, lean into that technique. If things are continuing to escalate, then you're going to need to change course. This may mean switching tactics or setting some firmer boundaries. For example, if someone's voice grows louder, you may want to further slow your speech and drop your tone even further. But if the person is yelling at you, don't talk to me like a child. Use your normal voice. Then that same technique is unlikely to be effective. If validating their feelings seems to be calming them down, then look for other opportunities to engage in empathetic statements. If escalation is continuing, change your tone or approach. To be clear, setting boundaries doesn't mean becoming argumentative or placing demands on the other person. You're going to need to talk to me with respect, okay? That is a demand on them. And as we've said, you can't control their behaviors, actions, and words. You can only control your own. Instead, think about a statement like, I need a moment to step back so that we can continue this when things are calmer, right? There are no you statements there. We're going to want to validate their feelings, but that doesn't mean agreeing or disagreeing. One of the fastest ways to diffuse tension is to let the person know that they've been heard. Validation doesn't mean you agree. It simply means that you acknowledge the way they're feeling. Use phrases like, I understand why you'd feel that way, or that sounds really frustrating. Avoid dismissive statements like, calm down, or it's not that big of a deal, or you're making this way worse than it needs to be. Imagine a patient demanding, I've been waiting forever and nobody seems to care. Your response may be something like, I can see how that would be really frustrating. Let's see what we can do to get things moving along. Try to focus on one thing at a time. When emotions are running high, people may often bring up many things, some past grievances, right? Once they get on a roll, they're going to start to fire as much ammunition at you as possible, even if it isn't you that is responsible for the situation. Ask them, what's the most important thing for us to resolve right now? Remind them, we'll get to all those things, but first, let's focus on one step at a time. It's important to make sure that you're asking for permission for any actions. Especially in healthcare, getting permission from the individual helps them maintain a sense of control and autonomy. You might say something like, is it okay if I check some vital signs? Or, I'd really like to check out that wound that you have. Would that be okay with you? In other situations, you may say, would it be okay if I step away to try to get some answers to the questions that you have? These small steps can help to really maintain their autonomy and fosters a sense of cooperation. Once you've successfully reached a conclusion, you really want to end on a positive note in a collaborative tone. If the situation now seems to be under control, focus on moving forward together. Summarize what's going to be happening next. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is this. Thank them for bringing this to your attention, even if it was a difficult conversation. You may say something like, I'm really happy that you let me know how you're feeling and that we were able to get things situated for you. De-escalation isn't about being a doormat or being run over by other people, but it's also not about you coming out on top as the victor. It's simply about getting the situation resolved in as neutral and safe of a way as possible. It's about understanding that when people are acting this way, they're commonly frustrated or scared or overwhelmed, but it's certainly not because they're bad people. The last thing I want to mention is practice. Every patient, client, and colleague is different, and not every situation is going to be the same. The techniques may not always come naturally. So, like anything else in life, practice is going to allow us to engage in these difficult conversations with a higher level of confidence and empathy. Look for opportunities to practice these skills on a smaller scale, so they're second nature by the time that you need them in a crisis. Think about some role playing with a colleague. It can be both fun and helpful in practicing these skills. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, think about sharing it with a friend or a colleague. Until next time, keep growing and learning. Take care of yourself and one another.